Good evening and welcome to another Thriving Together. I'm LaRonda Scott with eXp Realty, and I have the honor and pleasure of being, you are so modest. I just looked at your name tag, of talking to Dr. Zari McFadden. Zari, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Look, I am just as proud of you as your mom is. So when I looked at that, I was like, wait a minute, where's the doctor at? Well, I'm excited to have Zari on the call this evening because as we're going into the new year, I think it's important for people to have money on their mind, but in a way of thinking, I want to thrive financially in 2025. And how can I accomplish that? In some of the smallest of ways. And as a real estate agent, one of the things that I think about is that no, whether you're a first time home buyer, upgrading or downsizing, if you take advantage of any down payment assistance programs, first time home buyer programs, grants, you are still going to have some cash, some skin in the game when it comes to purchasing your home. And if you have the ability to take advantage of some of these programs out there, in terms of the money that you have to have, that's looking like your due diligence, your earnest money, appraisals, your surveys, things of that nature. So it's like, okay, how can I make sure I have the money that I need to purchase, but also save for emergencies, but then also have a good time because I work every day. This adulting thing is something special. So, Zari, speaking of, what you think about adulting?
Well, I think I'm baby adulting still, but I think so. This will be about budgeting, of course.
Yeah.
I think budgeting is like the framework that you use to help plan your life and do that adulting thing.
Mhm.
And so, to me, like having a budget is having a plan for your money and your life. And it's not just about restriction, it's also about planning for your goals and being intentional about the things that you want to do. And so
Mhm.
to me, when I think about adulting, it's about trying to be proactive and be proactive rather than reactive with the things that I want to do, the plans that I have, and trying to also make sure I'm like enjoying life and having fun. So it's like being responsible, planning for the big stuff, the non-essential or the essentials, the things that you
Mhm.
can't live without, but also the things that you want to do, the goals that you want to have. And I think budgeting gives like a framework. However you choose to do it gives a framework to reach that goal.
So, complete transparent moment when I was 24, because you're 24, right?
Yes.
Budgeting was not top of mind for me, coming out of college, trying to figure out life. And quite honestly, I took care of business and whatever happened, happened.
Yeah.
How long have you been in that intentional mind frame? What really got you there?
Mhm. Probably. Well, I have to give my mom credit because I feel like when I was younger, before I was really paying attention, like she would
Mhm.
listen to stuff like Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, some like Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I don't abide by. That's not really a financial book, but
Yeah.
like being exposed to those financial concepts. And then around like 16, 17, I started getting into more like personal finance content. I was introduced to the
Mhm.
concept of FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early, and concept books like Your Money or Your Life,
Mhm.
The Simple Path to Wealth, the Little Book of Common Sense Investing. So I just consumed a lot of personal finance content as like a 16, 17 year old, which I know is probably not normal for most people. But really, what really got me excited was this idea of financial independence, of financial independence, retire early, and the idea of being able to like set up your life and your money and your wealth to be able to have like passive income to help pay for the stuff that you want so that you can live the life that you want, and work
Mhm.
becomes optional but not mandatory, and having
Mhm.
that amount of control of your life.
Right.
Is That's sort of what led to me being super personally interested in financial independence. So when
Mhm.
I was 17, I was like learning about Roth IRAs. And so I opened up a Roth IRA and I needed my mom. It had to be a custodial account
Yeah.
because I wasn't 18. And so my mom, well, I just took her social security number, or she gave me her social security number, and like I opened the account myself. And
Yeah.
custodial account. And I was
That's a
like,
good use, mind you. Those that are listening, that was a very good, responsible use. Go ahead.
yeah, no, and she knew this was like with total permission,
Right,
not
right.
fraudulent or anything. But yeah, I just had this idea. I was like, yeah, I want to get a job and like save a bunch of money and like retire at 30. And my plans have since shifted. Then I've gotten a lot more nuanced about like life and realizing, there's a whole lot of life after 30. So let's be more intentional about what do I want to do. But in the back of my mind, it's always this thing of trying to set myself up financially for the
Mhm.
future and balancing that out. And so to me, budgeting has never been about restriction. It's been about trying to be intentional about like what I want to do, the things I want to do. So in college and stuff, it was, saving up money over the summer so that during the school year when I wasn't really making any money, I would have money to live off of. Or if me and my friends wanted to go on a trip, thinking about how much we wanted to save for that trip and having a plan to save for that trip. So it was always sort of geared towards one, trying to reduce stress in my life, like knowing,
Mhm.
I'll have to pay car insurance, I'll have to pay for my hair or whatever. How do I
Mhm.
make sure I have those funds set aside early so that when those things come up, I'm not stressed. But then also, how do I have the funds set aside for the stuff that I really want to do, that I'm excited about? And so that's where budgeting and finance and stuff has been important to me.
I love what you said about it though, to where it's budgeting is not restriction. I think some people, when they hear that word, it's almost like a dirty word, a cuss word. And they think about almost like people think about dieting because you're restricting yourself.
Mhm.
But like you said, it's really having those freedoms, reducing stress, things of that nature. If you don't mind me asking, again, you started 17, you're here 24. What has been something that you've been really proud of that you intentionally budgeted for that you've been able to do as a result of being mindful of the way you spend?
I've been except for this year, but previous years, like
Mhm.
I've been very consistent about trying to max out my Roth IRA.
Yeah.
Um, me and a friend went to Japan like this summer, our freshman year of undergrad, and then same friend we went to Greece. And
Hmm.
so like a bunch of like international trips. When I studied abroad my junior year of undergrad, and so I had like money and budget. I was like budgeting and saving money for that, so that I could like once I was studying abroad, I'd
Yeah.
still have money to like travel to the countries that I wanted to visit while I was there. So yeah, just like those sort of things. I think pretty much are this earlier this summer, I studied abroad in Rwanda, and I was saving the money to pay for that trip, based off
Hmm.
of like my budget and stuff. Um, Paying for laser hair removal, so just all types of things. And I think eventually I'll show my like year long budget planning template because that's what I've
Hmm.
used to help me plan that far in advance. But I am somebody who that's to me a budget is very proactive because I do like to think ahead to the future.
Hmm.
And I've been that way. It's not just about money. Like in my life in general, I'm very much a planner. And so money is just sort of an extension of that and is the means for me to do the things that I want to do in the future. That's how I think about it. But for a lot of people, like money is like you said, or budgeting is like a dirty word. But I think in general, money is stressful. Like, especially if you don't have enough, or you don't feel like you're in control of it, or you feel like it's something that you constantly have to fight for, fight about, feel insecure about. I think that
Hmm.
can color your perception of money and how you interact with it. And so I think a lot of it sort of starts with trying to shift from thinking of money as something that happens to you rather than, or, and more of like a tool that you use to help shape the life that you want.
I'm just pausing because I'm just pausing. You have me in awe. So I say that because the first conversation that I heard from Zari, she actually presented a couple of weeks ago in a larger group setting with the wealthy group out of Atlanta. And she was sharing her budgeting strategies and everything. And I was hanging on her every word. For me, some of the concepts that she shared, of course, I know those things. But again, it excites me that it's coming from you, that you've been practicing this for the last 7 years. And I'm really hoping that it can inspire other people, either your age, younger, or even older, to really take account, I'll say it, take accountability for what happens with their money. And like you said, it's not something that happens to you, it's a tool. So, how do we turn it into a tool? So, let's jump into that. You shared in like a presentation style with us, there's different ways to budget. What are some different budgeting strategies there? Because it's not one size fits all. So, what are some strategies that people can use?
So there's like the 50-30-20 budgeting method where the goal is 50% of your income towards expenses, 30% towards wants, and then 20% towards savings. And so that's a looser framework. There's the pay yourself first method where you think about how much you want to sort of put in like long-term savings or towards your savings goals and towards your investments and retirement. And then whatever is left, you can just sort of spend the way that you want to spend without necessarily tracking every dollar to see which category it fits in. There's zero-based budgeting where you have your income and every dollar of your income is assigned a spot. So it's a little bit more hands-on than pay yourself first. And then there's Ramit Sethi's conscious spending plan, where he sort of categorizes money into 4 buckets, like needs, saving, investment, and then like guilt-free spending. So he gives some certain ranges, like 50 to 60% towards needs, 20% or 10% towards saving, 20% towards, I might be getting the numbers mixed up, like 20% towards guilt, or towards like wants, guilt-free spending, and then maybe 10%. That doesn't add up to 100. Though he has ratios that's for the like conscious spending plan. And his thing is also like, I really like Ramit Sethi's content because he talks a lot about living your rich life and people building like a rich life vision for themselves as far as what they want, and trying to make sure that your spending, that's why he calls it a conscious spending plan, that your spending matches the life that you want. And recognizing that you're building a life that you want, and that the way people spend their money, like it should vary person to person, because everybody has different things that they value. So I sort of fall somewhere, I think, in the middle. Like I do have my year-long goal tracker, which I guess in a way is zero-based budgeting. But I'm not super strict about areas. I'm more so think about what my goals are, and what like between necessary and wants, and then trying to see how, I almost treat it like a puzzle, like how can I make this work over the course of a year towards my individual goals. So yeah, but the way it works, it would be, I think the best method will vary person to person, and it'll be whatever method works for you, and is for you.
Now, I'm going back to the first one, and I was typing as fast as you were spitting them out. As you can tell, this is not scripted. We don't script at all. So I want to revisit. So there was a 50-30-20 method. And
Yes.
remind folks what that entails.
Yeah, so 50-30-20 is more like a guideline for how much you should allocate your money, your income towards different categories. So 50% towards needs, 30% towards wants, and then 20% towards savings goals. And I think those could be both like long-term, short-term savings and retirement savings.
Okay. And then there was the pay yourself first. Is there a percentage in terms of paying yourself? How's that work?
I think the pay yourself first, there's not a set percentage. It's more so you sort of set that up for yourself. So like if some people might have a goal of like, oh, I want to make sure 15% of my income goes towards retirement savings and 10% goes to short-term, long-term goals, then the income that you make off the top goes straight to those percentages or towards those goals. And the rest of it is what you spend on your needs throughout the month. So it's not a set percentage, like that's something that you determine for yourself. But it is a way because a lot of people, when it comes to saving, what they'll do is, oh, I'll spend money on what I want to do or what I need to do, and then whatever is left, I'll save. Oftentimes, it's like you never save anything because there's not anything left. And so the
Right.
pay yourself first method is saying, I'm going to take this straight off the top and then I can spend whatever is left.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess that goes into the zero-based budgeting. You're
Yeah.
accounting every penny of it. I think you equated that to something no one does anymore, and that's the checkbooks. Remember, you used to have the little look. I'm saying remember. You don't know anything about it, but
I've
I
never had a
remember.
checkbook.
Yeah, you've never had a checkbook. Oh my gosh. I sold a house to a couple, and in the documentation from the attorney, they talked about no, it was on the paperwork, the offer to purchase. It asked how they were going to pay their due diligence and their earnest money, and it says personal check on there. And of course, they call me and they say, so we're millennials. We don't have a checkbook. Don't you
Yeah.
see how old I am? Can we not do that?
I also
So,
have a checkbook.
so back in the day, we had a checkbook, and there was the register, I guess you could say. And every dime you spent out of your checking account, you would come and you write it down and you subtract, and you're keeping up with every cent that you were spending. I guess you can do that digitally. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
what
my
I
bank
do
account
that
does it
to
for
now.
me.
Yeah, it's all done. You just go online and check it out now. So, wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the goal of a zero, and people do zero-based budgeting. They just do it
Mhm.
like through apps and stuff. Like I don't, well, and some people might have a physical ledger. Like some
Some
people might,
people do. They
yeah,
still
I'm sure some
do.
people do.
But that
But
is old school. I just
yeah.
aged myself. But that's exactly what made me think of. I remember when I first got married and my husband and I were joining our accounts. I
Mhm.
go, so what did you spend today? Or do you have any receipts? And it's like, oh, I spent like $10 here and that. I'm like, I can't write
Right.
like $10. I need to know for dollars and
Yeah.
cents. So yeah. Moving on. So which one do you use? Do you like you said, I think you said you were kind of in the middle. Do you have a preference and why?
Yeah, I probably am sort of like in the middle. I guess I'm most probably closely aligned with zero-based budgeting, but like I don't feel like I'm that strict. It's just like on my budget template, I do assign sort of each number of
Mhm.
plays, but like on a day-to-day life, I don't necessarily like. So the way I sort of do it is I have like, oh, money that I plan to spend out throughout the year, and I don't track where those dollars go, but then I'll track
Mhm.
where each of my track to see if I'm hitting my savings goals. So that's what I'm saying. It's sort of like, I guess, a mix between pay yourself first and zero-based budget. I don't do 50, 30, 20.
Mhm.
Because it's like, oh, I have my goal spending for the month, and then that could just sort of go wherever. I'm not tracking that, like, oh, I only paid $50 for entertainment or something like that. But I do
Mhm.
also have like financial goals, and I'm like, okay, as long as I'll try to hit these. So I guess it's sort of between those two.
So as long as you're hitting your spending and goals, then
Mhm.
other things can fall in different places.
Yeah, or like hitting my savings goals, then like my spending goals
So
can
that's
sort
what
of
I meant. That's what I meant. Your
yeah,
savings goal.
yeah.
Okay. And then we talked a little bit more about the conscious spending part. So I think maybe not being as strict, there's some psychology to it as well, to where it makes budgeting feel better and you're more prone to do it versus getting so strict with it that it's hard to keep up with it. And then it's like, I don't want to do it anymore
I
or it's
think
too much work.
I think it depends on the person and like the personality type, because for some people, especially if you're just starting to like think about your money and like trying to dial in on your spending and stuff, then you probably will need to be more strict with yourself. Because I think at the original section somebody asked about using like cash envelope system, and I think
Mhm.
that could definitely be a good system, especially if you're like, oh, when I get a card, I'm just gonna swipe my card. Than using like a cash envelope method where you're like, you put the cash in the envelope, and once you've spent that money in the envelope for that category, you can't spend anymore. Then I think that could also work. So I think it just depends. I think when people first sort of start budgeting, then you probably will need to be a lot stricter about paying attention to where your money goes and stuff, especially if you
Right.
haven't done that before. And then the more you sort of get comfortable with that and get comfortable with like you're spending, you're achieving your goals and stuff, then you don't have to be as strict about every dollar.
I'll tell you the money thing. I did it way back in the day, but to do it now in the age of Apple
Yeah.
Pay and Cash App and everything, because I don't know where my checkbook is. Now, granted, I talked about it. I have one. It's in a black and gray case somewhere. I don't know where it is, and I don't carry cash. I need to get in the habit of carrying cash. So I know for myself, like you said, it's based on each individual. It's not one size fits all. I think I would drive myself crazy and quit budgeting altogether if I did the cash in the envelope method. So
I
that
agree.
I know. That I know. Um, One thing that I did want to ask you, I know you talked about some tips and tricks when it comes to budgeting. What are some of those tips and tricks you would like to share?
Yes, so look, now I have to pull up my slides. So I think one of them, the one that works really well for me is setting up different savings accounts slash saving buckets. I
Hmm.
think putting a name to the goal that you're saving for is very influential. Like that's probably one of my top tips. That's what I tell everybody because some people don't know that you can just open up multiple bank accounts.
Right.
So I do this less now because Ally Bank does offer buckets where you can just open a single savings account and then you can have a bucket in there and you can
Hmm.
put a name for that bucket and a goal amount and then you can sort of distribute your money into buckets. But pre that, I used to just open up a new bank account. Like I open up bank accounts like nobody's business. And each bank account you can like change. And I think this is true for probably most banks. Like you can change the name of your account. And so like when I would have a Greece trip or someplace or Japan, like I would have a bank account and I would call it Japan. And so
Hmm.
then assigning that name to the savings goal, I think makes a huge difference because then you're not just like it's like you can know in your mind that you're saving for something, but like seeing that visual reminder is like, oh, I'm really saving for this. Let me
Hmm.
not spend this money somewhere else.
Hmm.
So I think having different either bank accounts or buckets, if you use Ally and labeling them, being specific about the goal amount, I think really is helpful. Adding leeway to your budget, like you, that might mean you extend the timeline for when you set a goal, but like having that sort of leeway, I think sort of takes the pressure off of feeling like, oh, if I don't hit this goal perfectly this month, then like I'm a failure. I'm not going to hit it. It'd be like, okay, it's okay. Like most of us probably aren't saving up for something that's immediately urgent. And so if it's not immediately urgent, then you will probably be okay if you add a week or a month or even like a couple of years to a goal or to your timeline just to make it easier and less stressful on you because it's better to make some progress is better than no progress and it's better
Hmm.
to aim for some progress than to aim for perfection because once you stop hitting that perfection then it'll make it harder for you to stick to it. So I would always say aim for progress rather than perfection. And then, like I said, planning for like out a year out. So trying to think of your budget not just month to month, but also what are my goals for a year. And then to me, that helps you see the big picture where it's like, even if you don't hit something in the month that you want to hit it, um, you can still see that, okay, it might not be this month that I'm saving for this goal, but over the course of a year, I can see where I'm making that up and where that goal will be met. And I think that also helps for staying motivated for your timeline.
You're talking about smart goals, and I'm going to say don't set yourself up for failure. Give
Mhm.
yourself grace. Like you
Yes.
said, aim for progress, not for perfection, because you you put a budget in place and you're not realistic about it and put yourself in a position where there's no way you can hit it as quickly as you
Hmm.
thought. Or if you budget beyond the income that's coming in and the needs that you have, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's easy to throw your hands up and say, see, this didn't work.
Hmm.
That's why I've never had a budget. So
Yeah.
give yourself grace, be realistic in your goals, and as Zari said, aim for progress, not perfection. But keep going. I'm sorry. I paused you.
Oh, yeah, those are the main tips. I do really like SMART goals, which is what specific, measurable. Um, I forgot what the
Oh,
A stands for. A stand achievable, uh,
achievable.
realistic, and time bound. I
Hmm.
do think SMART goals because also that, and this doesn't just apply to money, but anything in life. We can say we want to do a thing, but just wanting to do a thing is not. You have to make it actionable, and you have to make it so that there's things that you're going to hit
Mhm.
along the way to achieving that goal. And so I do believe in like SMART goals, and you might not necessarily plan it out in that way. I think the framework is helpful, but being able to say like have a specific goal, like if you're like, oh, I want to go on vacation, where do you
Right.
want to go to? How much money do
Mhm.
you want to spend? When do you want to
Mhm.
go? What is your plan for doing that? And if you can hit those points, then that makes the goal a lot more achievable. And I think also to a certain extent, like planning for a SMART goal, it also like loosens, gives yourself less of an excuse to not make that goal work. Because sometimes we say we want to do stuff and then we don't actually put anything in place to do that thing. And so
Mhm.
we can be like, oh, well, I had this goal, but you didn't, never actually tried it. And so
Mhm.
maybe we could give ourselves permission or a reason to think that this was not meant for us, even though we
Right.
didn't actually put any
A
actionable effort.
built-in excuse.
Yeah. And so I think setting yourself up, like whatever you want to do, making it an actionable plan. And sometimes you might just have a dream and you're like, I'm okay with this being a dream. And it might not be something that you actually want to do. I've had tons of
Mhm.
things like, oh, I might be interested
Yeah.
in that. But once I make something like a SMART goal, more specific, implement a plan, then it's like, okay, I'm on
Mhm.
things to aim for.
Yeah, write it down, put it in your phone, do something to where
Yeah.
it becomes not just a dream, but something that you're really aiming for.
Yes.
So if there's someone that's listening that says, "Well, I don't get paid a lot. I have a lot of bills. I have this and that. I don't have the money to save." What would you say to that?
I would say you can start small. Like, because sometimes, given the financial reality that we live in, like some people just don't make enough money to live, and
Right.
I want to respect that. And so I think one thing is like giving your self permission to start small, even if it's $5 a month or something. I
Mhm.
think putting to starting to exercise the muscle of budgeting or the muscle of saving is helpful because then you can get in that habit, and once you start making more money or whatnot, you can just increase those increments. And then if you really don't have enough money to reach a goal, then making it a goal to try to find ways to increase income, whether it's through side hustles, asking for a raise at work, if you're an entrepreneur, upping your prices, that sort of thing. And so
Mhm.
I say you can do something, even if it's like, even if it's, oh, I literally don't have money to do this thing right now. Well, I can put a plan in place for how I'm going to change that. Or I can start a side hustle where I know like 10% of this money or whatever is going to go towards this savings goal or
Mhm.
whatever. Like putting a plan in place to either change the circumstance for why you can't do something by either increasing income, changing a job, whatever, and or implementing like being like, oh, I'm gonna start with a little bit because every
Mhm.
sort of dollar adds up, and being like, okay, I can build from here. So I'm working that muscle.
That's a good point. When you were talking about creating an opportunity to make it happen, and you mentioned the side hustle. So if you've been making life work
Yeah.
with this over here, and
Mhm.
then you get a side hustle, don't stretch your life to consume
Yeah.
that side hustle. Let that side hustle be how you start implementing your budgeting and you're putting money away.
Yes.
Because at the end of the month, that $5 that you've done a couple weeks and is sitting in savings is better than you were the month before. But I tell you, I know for me, if I don't label it, because I need to start labeling things, but once I start seeing my savings grow, it has
Hmm.
got to be an emergency before I touch it because I
Yes.
start feeling real good about it and I don't
Mhm.
want to see the amount go down.
Yes. Yes. That's actually a good point. Yeah, I think what, so I think also planning, trying to start creating a system for yourself.
Mhm.
So of course everybody should have an emergency fund, where an emergency fund is. I don't have an emergency fund yet, but well, I have a baby emergency fund. I have an emergency
Mhm.
fund that allows me to reach my deductible, but like I had much lower expenses living at home for school. But
Right.
an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside, and that's only for an emergency, and that's something that people take years to build up, and it's fine, as long as you having some savings is better than no savings.
Right.
Because I think the statistic is like most people couldn't afford a $400 emergency. Like they would have to
Mhm.
borrow that money from a friend, they would have to sell it, they would have to put it on a credit card or something. So setting yourself up with some amount of money that's set aside into an emergency fund is helpful. Starting to think about, I like to what people call sinking funds. So that's like
Mhm.
you have some expenses that are maybe once a year or twice a year or once a quarter, stuff that doesn't come up consistently, starting to set aside money to plan for those so that when they come up, you're not caught by surprise, you're not caught off guard. And then
Mhm.
having money for the goals that you want to go. If you want to go on a vacation, if you want to save up for a house down payment, if you want to move, whatever, then you have those goals. But then you also have to think about retirement. And retirement, especially if you start younger and you have a longer time horizon, then when you're starting with those $50, $100 a month things, like over the course of 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that can really add up to be a lot through like compound interest, depending on how you're investing it. And so
Mhm.
I would say try to, and that can all sound like a lot, but trying to, one, acknowledge their existence, and two,
Right.
like think of like manageable ways that you can meet those goals. Um,
Mhm.
Trying to set a system, like set up automatic savings. Like for most employers will allow you to send money to multiple different bank accounts. So if you don't want to actively transfer, you can say, I want you to send either a percentage or a set amount of my check to this account, this account, this account. That's what I do with some of my
Mhm.
checks. I will be like, I'll enter the savings account number and stuff, and then I'll give it a nickname. And I know the nickname is like, I'm saving for car insurance, or I'm saving for year-long expenses, or I'm saving for this trip. And then I have this specific amount. So then I'm not even actively thinking about it. And you can do the same thing with like retirement and stuff like that. And so I think the more systems that you have in place that I believe in removing friction. Like the less things that are in the way of you achieving your goals, the more likely you are to stick with it. So if you have a
Yeah.
system that you automate and it's like, okay, all of my money will automatically go to these spots so I don't have to think about it. And then I know whatever is money is in my checking account, that's what I can spend this month and be fine with.
Mhm.
So I think start to think about ways that you can remove resistance between you and the goals that you want to achieve. Thinking about where you want to go, like what your goals are, and starting to see progress towards those goals to get you excited. And even setting like smaller goals that are easily achievable. So it's like, oh, like if I reach this goal, then I'll take myself and get a massage or something. Something where it's like you might have a hefty goal that
Yeah.
takes a while, like saving up for a house down payment or paying
Mhm.
off debt or whatnot. Like that could be stuff that takes years. You can add like milestones along the way. That's something that you get excited about to keep you on track towards that goal.
Yeah, keep you motivated and be real with yourself.
Yes.
You were talking about having your paycheck go into different accounts.
Hmm.
If you know that if it's all dumped into your checking account, something's not going to be saved. Do
Yes.
like Zari was saying, and use the opportunity to have your check going into different accounts. You
Yeah.
have to know yourself, be real with yourself, most
Hmm.
important.
Yeah.
No
Like
one.
don't try to fight against your psychology. You will probably lose. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Reduce resistance and don't try to fight against yourself based off of who you think you should be or who you want to be. Go
Right.
based on who you actually are.
Right. Get started, develop that rhythm, get the habit, and then maybe you'll get there. But right now, we know you're not there.
Yeah.
I want to share Zari's information because she's presenting an opportunity to support people one on one, share some concepts, help them build themselves financially, start working on a budget. So text her at the number you see here, 919-638-8296. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Text her. She's going to send a form over to get some information from you to learn more about you, where you are with budgeting. Like, have you gotten started or you have no idea what one was until we had this conversation tonight? But reach out to her. I think it would be great, again, to get yourself moving towards a financially healthy 2025 and build yourself to that financial freedom. that comfort, that stress, being more stress free, excuse me, when it comes to your finances.
Yes.
So before we go, you have like a spreadsheet
Mhm.
that you use to manage everything. Pull
Yeah.
that bad boy up because she's put some thought into it. She's got formulas and everything going on.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
I can. Let me see if I can get it added. So, folks, there it is.
Okay. So yes, this is my year-long goal planning template. So
Don't
yeah,
be scared, y'all. Don't be scared. It's
yes,
all
don't be scared. I have to keep in mind that this was created based off of how my brain works, but don't be scared. So the way it works, like I said, I'm very goal oriented. So
Mhm.
I set this. So there's different. Column A is about putting in your goals. So you could put in like a goal for how much you think your rent's going to cost for the year. Say like, I don't know, $24,000 a year or something. And then you
Mhm.
might have a goal for like vacation, and you want to spend, I don't know, $3,000 on this vacation or whatnot. Then in the pink boxes underneath each month, you can put in like your approximate income for the month. I would do whatever your income is post tax. And then you can say like, oh, if you know your rent's going to average to be like $2,000 a month, then you would put that in that area, and you would also probably include your other expenses, which expenses slash goals here. And then you'll see like leftover money. And that's what I meant when I said before, I sort of treat it like a puzzle. With this year long spending plan, like you can estimate out what your income will be for each month. Some months you might
Mhm.
have more money, especially like tax refund time, you might have get more money, and you could put
Right.
that into the month that it will hit. Some months you might have less money. And then for each goal, like once you put the goal in, it'll tell you, it'll like update to say what the leftover amount is for that goal, and you can see when you might hit a specific goal. So say like vacation, like you don't have any other expenses in here, but you put $500 a month, 500 in January towards a vacation, then you know you have $2,500 left over, and you could play with planning out where you think that money will go. And
Mhm.
so I, like I said, I like a year long plan because you get a fuller picture of how all of this works together. And so if
Mhm.
say February you have less money, like you made 3,000, then you might only put $100 towards a vacation goal, but you can still see that there's progress being made, and you can see where it would fit in the overall timeline of the year. So yeah, this is the spreadsheet. You would put in the goals, you could put in the amount that you want to put towards that goal. For like monthly expenses, I might would just multiply it out for the entire year, and that way you
Mhm.
can have an estimate of how much you would spend each month. And then the fun stuff that is more variable, then you can sort of play with, okay, in this month I could save more, this month I might save less, but I know where I'll hit it.
Mhm.
And you could also, to me, I like to play with it because I can see when I can hit a goal faster versus slower. So yeah, this is my little budgeting template, and then I just have it for each month. It's like this each year, the same thing. Um,
Okay, little. Now, but I do like it because it's a year in review.
mhm,
And if something happens one month, you can kind of have a gap plan and figure out how am I going to make up some, traction for the remaining of the year so
mhm.
that I make sure I hit this goal that I've had for this year or for the, 6 months, upcoming months.
Yes,
So I do
yeah.
like that.
And this is what I meant by saying like I sort of do a zero-based budgeting slash like pay yourself first sort of method, because there might be times where it's like leftover money and I might just have like a miscellaneous category, and then whatever's left would go in that miscellaneous category. And so once when you don't, if there's no money in that goal, then it'll turn red to indicate that you're putting more towards a goal than what you had. So yeah, this is sort of
Mhm.
how the spreadsheet works. There's formulas and stuff in here.
Like
um,
that.
so yeah.
I do. I like it a lot. And again, I'm putting her information up here because this could be something that she walks through, provides you with this spreadsheet, walks through how to create it for yourself. Maybe the two of you can work on creating one that speaks more to your life and what you have coming up, what your needs are. You may need to break something down to where it's 6 months or just a different look period. So again, text Zari at 919-638-8296 to talk more and get your financial life together so that you can thrive financially in 2025. Is there
Yeah.
anything that we missed? Because we talked a lot about different things before we got on the line.
Yes. I actually wanted, because I had a slide in here that talked about inconsistent income. So
Okay.
I still wanted to go over what
Yes.
I put
Show
in
that.
there. So yeah, when it comes to inconsistent income, especially for people who are entrepreneurs, which a lot of, I
Ooh,
imagine, might have a lot of like real estate agents where
speak
you might
on
not
it.
have a consistent paycheck that's the same each month. I would say plan with conservative estimates. So if your income varies dramatically, go based off of the lowest amount. And then because if you know you're going to hit your lowest amount, anything that's extra, you can make an allocation plan to account for that extra amount, but it's much harder to make up a difference if you plan for higher income than what you hit. So I would say
Mhm.
plan based off of the lowest amount, not the highest amount. And then any extra surprise money or unexpected money, then you could set up a plan. You could say 60% of this will go to savings, 20% to investing, 20% to fund money. So it's like, even though it wasn't money that you planned for, you still have a plan for it.
Mhm.
And then for like thinking about it over a year, I would say calculate your yearly average estimate by sort of multiplying I guess, the lower amount for your month by 12, and then
Mhm.
use that as your monthly budget amount. And then anything extra, you would use your allocation plan for.
Yeah, that'd be great because it also helps you get to know your business, know when your money gets funny, when the money is coming in strong. It made me think about people in education where teachers getting paid during the course of the school year and then they're not getting that regular paycheck during the summer, planning for that as well.
Yeah.
So again, Zari comes with a lot of information. She's done a lot of studying. She's practicing it herself. And that's what I like. You're not just sharing information and telling people this is what you should do. You're
Mhm.
practicing, you're having proven success and sharing that with other people. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I think the most important thing is, I think, being flexible, because your money and like the way you manage it will change depending on the time in your life. So like for me right now, my money, like the way I'm managing my money is different because still
Mhm.
looking for full-time employment. So that's different than working as a student and you have like a consistent check, or even like the difference between going from student to full-time or whatnot. So
Right.
allowing flexibility, like your money and the way that you manage your money and the goals that you hit or whatnot, they will change as your life changes, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
that goes for anybody that's going through a transition in life. Like if you're somebody who's about to become a new parent, or you are a new parent and you have a lot of expensive daycare expenses, like that might be something that messes up your budget for a while, and that's okay.
Mhm.
So it's just making sure that you have a plan that's consistent and realistic for the space in your life that you're at, and giving yourself grace for if that plan does not look the way that you always want it to look. That's okay, because ultimately life is what you do here. Like the money is a tool for that, but ultimately, like, you're planning how to live your life. And your money should not become your life. It should be
Right.
for you to live the life that you want to live. And the way Ramit Sethi always says, the way that you feel about money is highly uncorrelated to the amount of money that you have in your bank account. It's much more emotional. It's much less logical. Like, you don't have to treat money as if it always has to be logical or rational, because a lot of the stuff that would be make the most sense financially or numbers wise would lead to a miserable existence. And that, to me, that defeats the point. He always says there, like, it sucks to like live a life that's smaller or less than the life that you want to live. So I would say
Mhm.
about money in terms of the life that you want to live, the goals that you want to create, the goals you want to meet, the memories that you want to create, and structure it around there rather than the specific numbers, because the numbers don't mean anything except for the math or the value that we assign it. The numbers are sort of a proxy for the life that we're creating for ourselves. So I would say keep that in mind when it comes to budgeting your money.
I love it. Zari, thank you for your time, for your knowledge, for sharing your knowledge. Just knowledgeable, wise beyond your years, as they say. But I love it and I'm soaking it in because I'm learning things from you as well. So I sincerely hope that people do reach out to you and take advantage of that because they, again, money can be such a stressor. It can cause problems for you as an individual and relationships, all of those things. There's an opportunity for you to take control of that. So please text Zari with that to get more information on that moving into the new year. And after Zari helps you with creating a budget, and now you've saved your down payment and you're ready for that first investment, or not even your primary home, but to make an investment, because that's one of the buckets that I want to create for myself, Zari, is putting money aside to where I can begin investing in real estate. So here's my information as well, because real estate is truly tied to the ownership of real property. So Sorry, thank you again. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Tell your mom I said hi.
I will. I will.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great night.
Have a good night.